Okay, build time. I'm gonna try to keep this short and sweet, so probably an hour. No, I'm gonna try to actually keep it really short. Um, at least as short as possible with trying to get everything across that I want to get across. So, Dragonknight Tank build. I really like the Dragonknight class as a tank. It's long been one of the more superior classes, if not the superior class to tank on in the Elder Scrolls Online. And it's also very beginner friendly, while it still holds up in absolute endgame content. So if you want to get into tanking, or if you are a tank and you're just looking for a bit of a more fun, different approach for dungeons and trials, welcome to this video. Now, we are a Dragonknight tank. Dragonknights are mostly revolving around fire, poison, and that's what this build is based on. It's not the meta build. Obviously, everybody knows that Alkosh and Ebon is pretty much the meta thing, with a couple other sets thrown into the mix that you'll mostly find in the hardcore endgame content, but this build revolves around bringing a lot to the table, a lot of debuffs for the enemies and a lot of buffs for the groups as well. Okay, let's get into the character sheet. We're on 16, almost 17k max magicka, 44k max health, which is good because a lot of our skills scale of our max health, so I don't really want to go too low with health. And then 22k max stamina, which is quite a big pool, and that should be more than enough with all our skills to control your resources and not run out of stamina while you're blocking. We got 1400 magicka recovery. You don't want to go any lower than this because we'll need it if we want to sort of spam, well, not spam, but make efficient use of our magicka abilities, which we have a lot of. And then spell resistance is 27k and physical resistance is 25k. This will go up though with one of our skills that we're using to 32k and 30k. The cap is 33k. Anything over that doesn't make sense anyway, but this is more than enough. Like, you don't have to cap out physical and spell resistance. It's nice to get close to it, but in my opinion anything over 28k is more than enough. Well, not more than enough, but enough to do all kinds of content in this game. 64 points into health. You could skip maybe 4 points into magicka if you wanted a bigger pool. Just make sure your stamina pool is always higher than your magicka pool, because if you're taking synergies, you will get back you'll get the resource back that is your highest pool, and you want stamina back when you take synergies, not magicka. However, 44k health is nice because, as I said, abilities scale over our max health. So if you want to, just keep it like this. We're using the Atronach as a Mundus Stone to increase our magicka recovery by 238, so we don't drop below the 1400 that we have here. And our food will be Bewitched Sugar Skulls, which is the new food from the last Witches Festival, and that gives us max health, max stamina, max magicka, and a nice bonus of health recovery. As drinks, or potions so to say, we're using the Tri-Stat Essence of Health. That gives us health back, magicka back, and stamina back, and also increases our health recovery, magicka recovery, and stamina recovery. These are pretty much exactly the same than the Tri-Stat restoration potions from the Crown Store that you get now and then in the dailies and all, so you can also use these. Okay, so much for that. Let's get into our skills. I'll first drop down to the race, which is important. We are a Nord. In my opinion, the best race to tank on in the game right now. Imperial is probably a close second. I used to be an Imperial on my Dragonknight, but I prefer the Nord a lot because it's not so easy to get your resistances up on a Dragonknight if you don't want to use monster sets just to get them up and have some space for other sets. And the Nord gives you an extra almost 4k physical and spell resistance just in their passives. And then it also gives you 1000 health and 1500 stamina, which is a little bit less than the Imperial would give you. Also, the Imperial gives a couple of resources back with a passive, but it's not too noticeable in my opinion. Like, ever since the race change that I've done, I just feel much more comfortable on a Nord because of my resistances, and the difference in the max health and max stamina bonuses are not very big. Plus, what's also really great on a Nord whenever you take damage, you gain 5 ultimate, which makes for a lot more war horns or whatever ultimate you choose, and it's really nice to build ultimate with this one. Okay, for the skills. Defensive stance is our shield. This comes from the one hand and shield skill line. Starts out as defensive posture, morph it to defensive stance. What it does is, it gives you a damage shield of almost 14k for 6 seconds. That also scales off of your max health, hence the high health pool. The next harmful direct damage projectile cast at you is reflected, and what makes it really good on your front bar is while you have a shield equipped, the amount of damage you can block is increased by 10%, and the cost of blocking is reduced by 10%. So that's perfect for tanking. If you're in the face of a boss, like say in Veteran Hell Ra or so, and the warrior is lashing out at you and doing his weird ass combos, you can block a whole lot more, and the cost of your blocking is also reduced, excuse me. Right, next one is our heal. That's Green Dragon Blood. Green Dragon Blood is from the Draconic Power skill line, and what it does is heals you for 37% of your missing health, and then it also increases your health recovery and stamina recovery by 20%, and your healing received by 8%. So also very nice. Looks like this, by the way. Pretty cool animation too. You just turn into the shadow thing and you can see your heart pumping the dragon blood through it. Next up is Igneous Shield. This is a base skill for every Dragonknight tank. Very important. It comes from the Earth and Heart skill line, and it morphs from Obsidian Shield. Morph it to Igneous Shield, and then what it does is it gives you a over 9k damage shield, but it also gives all of your allies a damage shield, and it also scales off of your max health. Plus you also gain Major Mending, increasing your healing done by 25%. That also means you self-heals, so if you pop a Green Dragon Blood to heal yourself, make sure to pop an Igneous Shield right before it, and then within 3 seconds you get 25% more out of your heal from Green Dragon Blood. Igneous Shield looks like this, pretty cool too. You got these stones flying around you and also around all of your allies who also get the shield that are close to you. Next up is a bit of a flex slot with this build. Heroic Slash is usually on every tank build for the minor maim that it does. It puts this debuff on the enemy or boss, reducing their damage done by 15% for 12 seconds. And then you also gain Minor Heroism, granting you ultimate every 1.5 seconds. Now with this build, this is a bit of a flex slot because we get our minor maim from elsewhere. However, I like to keep it on because of the heroism, just making sure I get a little bit more ultimate than I would without it. It's also from the one-handed shield skill line. So is the next skill, that is Ransack. That is our main taunt. You apply this to an enemy and then you taunt them to only attack you for 15 seconds. So that's how you pull aggro in close combat situations. You just stab them with Ransack. And what it also does is it puts Major Fracture on the enemy, reducing their physical resistance by 5k. And you also gain Minor Protection, which is really nice, reducing your damage taken by 8% for 15k. So this helps you protect yourself a little bit more. The other morph of this comes from Puncture, by the way, would be Pierce Armor. Pierce Armor does not give you Minor Protection, but it also adds Major Breach, which so you don't only reduce the physical resistance by 5k, but also the spell resistance by 5k. So if you're running with a Magicka heavy group, you might want to drop your own Minor Protection and give them the Major Breach. However, in most Trials groups or even Dungeon groups that I run with personally, I do not need Pierce Armor because the Major Breach comes from the healer who is using Elemental Drain on his destruction stuff, afflicting the enemy with Major Breach for 23 seconds, reducing their spell resistance. So if you don't have a healer with the destruction stuff and the Elemental Drain skill with you, you might want to use Pierce Armor. However, if you're in a well set up group where people know what they're doing, then you most likely get Major Breach from another source, and you can take advantage of that and just get the Minor Protection for yourself in addition with Ransack. This is your main taunt. This is just looks like this, like a sword stab, and then you can see the red flames over the enemy's head. That means he's taunted and he's only gonna attack you unless someone steals the taunt, obviously. You can also see it right above the, or below the target skeleton humanoid thingy on top there. The little buff with the broken shield, is the taunt that you got, and the one next to it on the left side is the major fracture. Just like with the heroic slash, add this, and then you have the minor maim as well, that symbol. So always make sure at your buffs, look at the timers up there, make sure you reapply the taunt before it runs out, but don't spam it. It's good enough if you wait until it drops to like 3 or 2 seconds and then reapply it. Just to keep the taunt up, keep the aggro on you. It's very important as a tank. Because if enemies run off and start killing your teammates, you're not going to have a good time in that group. Alright, our ultimate is Magma Shell. This is also from the Earth and Heart skill line. This is your oh shit button, and this pretty much makes you unkillable for 12 seconds. Because it limits all your incoming damage to 3% of your max health. And we've got 44k max health, so 3% of that is nothing, pretty much. So you can hardly even die when your Magma Shell is active. Also, when it's activated, nearby allies gain a damage shield for 100% of their max health. So DPS usually have a max health of somewhere between 15 and 18k. Maybe 20 if they're necromancers or have a lot of pets. But it's 100% damage shield is very, very big for a DPS. So that also helps them survive immensely. This is pretty much a go-to ultimate for any Dragonknight tank. If you don't need anything else, it's always really, really good, and a great oh shit button. Okay, we'll move on to the back bar. We're running a destruction stuff on the back bar. I have a lightning stuff here. You can also run an ice stuff. The difference is the lightning stuff can do shock damage and can set enemies concussed, off balance, which makes them take more damage from all other sources. And then there's also something in the champion points that DPS can unlock if they have at least 75 points into the tree where Thaumaturge is in, which makes them do more damage to off-balanced enemies even. So this is a pretty nice debuff, the off-balance thing that comes from lightning damage. However, you are a bit squishier with the lightning stuff than you would be with the frost stuff, so if you want to go the safe route, use a frost stuff. That will also help you with the taunting, because heavy attacks from a frost stuff draw aggro, as it says here in the trifocus passives. Fully charged frost stuff heavy attacks taunt the enemy to attack you for 15 seconds, and it also gives you a damage shield. Plus, when you're blocking with a frost stuff, the blocking costs magicka and not stamina, which can also be very nice. So safer route would be a frost stuff, but I prefer the lightning stuff. The skill we have here is Elemental Blockade. This comes from the Destruction Stuff skill line. It's the second thing you unlock there. Morph it to Elemental Blockade. It's called Wall of Storms or Blockade of Storms here, because I'm using lightning stuff. And what this does is you just slam the stuff down, and it makes an AoE field of storm where the enemies all take damage inside of it. And if you're lucky, you can proc it off balance, causing them to take even more damage from all kinds of sources. There it goes. If you just saw that, it said off balance. Next up is Unrelenting Grip. This is from the Ardent's Flame skill line, and this is a chain which can pull targets towards you, and if you try to pull a target that can't be pulled, you restore 100% of the ability's costs. So you can't really waste this, because you get the cost back if you cannot chain the target in. Plus you also get Major Expedition, which is very nice if you need to run somewhere quickly. This looks like this. Obviously I can't chain my target skeleton because I put it there. And as you can see, the cost of magicka is restored immediately. Plus it can also put a burning status effect on the enemy. And the little buff you see right above my skill bar, the purple thing, is the Major Expedition. That means I'm faster now after I use this chain. This can be very helpful if you're, for example, in Cloud Rest and Samaja ports around the room and you're having trouble keeping up with her while not wasting your stamina. Pull a chain and run to her quicker, because you got the Major Expedition from this skill as well. And obviously it's mostly used for crowd control. Say if I'm stacking up ads here, but there's an archer over there, I can just use the chain and turn him over there to the others. Another crowd control skill we've got here is Choking Talons. This comes from the Draconic Power skill line. And this just summons these talons from the ground, which are immobilizing the enemies for 4 seconds and also afflict them with minor maim. Plus it also does a synergy for your allies that they can activate to do magic damage. This just looks like this. You summon these claws from the ground, and everything they hit will be immobilized for 4 seconds just standing there. And then that gives you time to pull in archers with your chains and just stack things up really nicely, and then put a blockade down underneath them if you haven't done it yet. And just make life easier for your DPS, because if everything is grouped up nicely, all the AoE damage will make things die a lot quicker. Also on our back bar is balance. This is very important for this build. This comes from the Major Skills skill line. It's quite of a pain in the ass to level up, really. But what it does is you exchange 5,100 health for 3,000 magicka. And when the exchange is complete, you gain Major Resolve for 30 seconds, which is a really long time for Major Resolve, increasing your physical and spell resistance by 5k. However, the exchange reduces your healing done and damage shield strength by 50% for 4 seconds. So make sure that you're not using it if you can foresee some heavy damage incoming somewhere within the next 4 seconds after casting it. This is the Major Resolve is visible also here in the character sheet, as you can see there on our back bar, physical and spell resistance at 24 and 22k, and then you use that skill, you get the Major Resolve, and then it's 29 and 27k. And on the front bar, it's even 30, almost 33 and 30k, which is more than enough, really, because our front bar is the one that we're blocking on anyway when we're in the face of a boss. Okay, and then the last skill on our back bar is our range taunt. This is Inner Fire from the Undaunted skill line. Here, this deals magic damage, gives a synergy, but most importantly what we use it for is to range taunt enemies. So you have your ransack taunt here in the front bar to pull aggro of enemies, but if something else is a bit further away and you still want to taunt it so it doesn't go rampage on your group but rather towards you, you use Inner Fire, and then you can see the target is taunted as well. And then the ultimate on the back bar, like on pretty much every tank build, is going to be Aggressive Horn from the Assault skill line. You'll have to play a bit of PvP for that, Battlegrounds of Cyrodiil, and get some alliance points, because that's how you level up the skill line. And this will increase your group's magicka and max stamina by 10% for 30 seconds, and also for the first 10 seconds you will get Major Force, increasing your critical damage, and also all of your allies' critical damage for 10 seconds. So the reason why healers and tanks use this in rotation is mainly for the Major Force, increasing the critical damage. So whenever the group needs to do a whole lot of damage on one boss, you just do these war horns, and then you pull yours, and 10 seconds later someone else activates theirs, and then 10 seconds later someone else activates theirs. So you get the most out of or like the biggest uptime out of the Major Force, and your critical damage of your group is always increased. Okay, so much for that. Quickly go into some of the more important passives here. I'm not going to go through all of them, because if you're interested in them, which you should be, because a lot of them are very important as to how you even play as a tank. But I'm going to go into the most important ones. Here, we've got Combustion. When you apply a burning to an enemy, like you burn them, the burning status effect, you restore 500 magicka, and when you apply poison, you restore 500 stamina. This is very important because we have a couple of skills that can cause the burning status effect, and we're running poisons on our weapons, which can cause the poison status effect. So this is how we get magicka and stamina back. Very, very important. Also, when you deal direct damage with an Ardent Flame ability, which would be the Unrelenting Grip, the chain, you reduce the enemy's movement speed. These two are not too important really for tanks, however all of these are. Iron Skin, increase the amount of damage you block by 10%. While a Draconic Power ability is active, your healing received is increased by 12%. We do have the Talons and the Dragon Blood on the bars. Your health recovery is increased, and then your spell resistance is increased by a little bit over 3k. This is why a lot of Dragonknight tanks don't really know where it comes from. Your spell resistance as a Dragonknight tank will always be a little bit higher than your physical resistance unless you put a whole lot of points, champion points, into physical resistance to even it out. But it's not really much of a big deal. It's more of a, think of it more of a gift than, more of a gift in spell resistance than of physical resistance lacking. And Earth and Heart, obviously want all of these as well. Increases the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities, which is our Igneous Shield and our ultimate Magma Shell. It's very important. When you cast an ultimate ability, you restore health, magicka, and stamina for each point of the ultimate cost. Very, very cool. Great skill, great passive for tanking. Then Mountain's Blessing. When you cast an Earth and Heart ability, and we do cast the Igneous Shield very often. Then you and your group gain minor brutality, increasing the weapon damage by 10%. And also if you're in combat, you generate even more ultimate. So we've got ultimate generation from our heroic slash, from our Nord passives, from our Earth and Heart passives. We're going to be able to pull a lot of ultimates and give people a lot of war horns to increase everybody's critical damage and all. Very cool. And then this is very important, and this is going to lead into how a Dragonknight tank even really functions, or this build at least. When you cast a non-stamina Earth and Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. Now, our Igneous Shield is a non-stamina Earth and Heart ability because it costs magicka. So, how you can be in control of all of your resources at all times is balance. You trade health for magicka. Then, if you have full magicka, Igneous Shield, you trade magicka for stamina. And then if your health is low, you just put your green dragon blood and get your health back. Obviously green dragon blood is going to cost a little bit of magicka, but once you got used to tanking on a Dragonknight, you'll really start to appreciate that sort of trinity thing of balance to get magicka back, and then Igneous Shield to get stamina back, and then dragon blood to get health back. So you can always sort of completely be in control of your resources, and obviously if shit goes wrong and you mess it up a little bit, you've always got your magma shell or shit button, or even just your potions, your tri-stat potions that I showed you in the beginning that give you health, magicka, and stamina back. But this is what I really like about the magicka, about the Dragonknight tank, is how you're really in control of your resources, and even if one of them runs out, you still got ways to get them back by trading in other resources for it. Really cool. Obviously you want all of the one-handed shield passives and all of the destruction staff passives, because those are the weapons we're using. And then you want all of the heavy armor passives. I prefer 7 pieces of heavy armor instead of 5 pieces of heavy armor, 1 medium and 1 light on a Dragonknight tank, because I think the heightened physical and spell resistance, health recovery, and max health and all outweighs the little bit of stam recovery here, like 2% or 4%, and a little bit of magicka recovery here, and even the bit of Undaunted here, the increased max health, stamina, and magicka, that would go up from 2% to 6%, but what's another 4%, you know, when you can have a lot more resistances and health recovery and stamina. And magicka restored when you take damage, which is what tanks do. And also 14% max health bonus. Like, that's really good, because we are a tank, we need a lot of health, and a lot of our skills scale of our health. So on other classes, I've played with the concept of 5 heavy, 1 medium, 1 light, and it worked out quite fine. But for the Dragonknight, I've always preferred the 7 heavy, and I'm going to stick to that for this build as well. Fighters Guild, the only thing you could get here is you generate 9 ultimate when you kill an undead Daedra werewolf. Now, when are you ever gonna get the last shot in as a tank unless they die from some AoE effect like your Elemental Blockade or your Choking Talons. So if you have the skill points, grab that. It might be handy, even though I'm not sure how much difference it really makes. Mage's Guild though is very important because we're running balance on our back bar. Reduces the magicka and health cost of your Mage's Guild abilities by 15%, and balance costs health. So you don't want that to cost more than 5,100 health. Get these passives then. Also, this increases the duration of it, so we get the major resolve for longer time. And then Magicka Controller increases your max Magicka and Magicka recovery for each Mage's Guild ability slotted. So we do have balance slotted, and we do want a little bit extra Magicka recovery and Magicka, so get these as well. Undaunted, you want all of these. This one helps you get more resources from activating synergies, and then this one gives you 2% more max health, stamina, and Magicka just randomly for wearing armor in general, I guess. Assault, you don't need anything. Support, there might be times when you want to slot barrier or purge, especially in trials like House of Fabrication. Purge is always very welcome. And then if you have the Magicka 8 passive, it increases your Magicka recovery by 5% for each of these abilities slotted. So it's a good passive to have if you have to run one of these skills. Obviously you want all of your racial skills because that's what makes your race your race. And then alchemy, you want the medicinal use to have your potions last longer. Now I'm going to go into the sets, and then after that I'm going to go into optional skills, so stick around if you want to know other tanking skills that are good on a Dragonknight tank and might be useful in the future. Alright, sets. First thing we have is Yolnahkrin. This comes from Sunspire. It's an easy raid to do even if you don't have a raid group. Just go to Craglorn and watch out for people saying hosting NSS in the zone chat, and just whisper them and say, hey, I'm here, I'm a DPS or whatever. Let me join. If you are a tank, I wouldn't advise that unless you've watched a video on how to actually tank Sunspire before, because you're going to be responsible for pretty much keeping 11 other people alive, and if you don't know what you're doing, they might not be as happy with you as they could be. However, Yolnahkrin's is a great set. It gives you 1k max health, minor Aegis, to reduce all of your damage taken from dungeon, trials, and arenas monsters by 5%, and then an extra 1k stamina. Plus, the 5 piece bonus is awesome. You get minor courage, which increases everybody's weapon and spell damage in your group for 15 seconds when you taunt something. And you taunt stuff all the time because you're the tank, so you can pretty much have that up all the time. And everybody in your group will have increased weapon and spell damage all the time just because you're there taunting things. So this is one of the great tank sets. Plus Yolnahkrin is a dragon, and I wanted to sort of play with that concept of dragon armor for this build. However, it's one of the best tank sets around at the moment anyway, so that you're not doing wrong with not getting this. I'll go into optional sets if you're a beginner after I'm done with this build here. Then our monster set is going to be Torbukun. This drops from Fanglair. Gives you 1k extra health. Plus, when you take damage from a nearby enemy, you summon a pool of Desecrated Bile for 8 seconds. And all the enemies inside of it will take disease damage and get afflicted with minor maim and minor defile for 4 seconds, reducing their damage done by 15%, and also reducing their healing received and health recovery by 15%. This can occur every 8 seconds, and it lasts for 8 seconds, so you can have 100% uptime on it. Now, this is really cool, mostly because of the minor maim reducing their damage done. So whenever you're tanking something, and this thing can proc all the time pretty much with 100% uptime, you're always gonna have the boss doing 15% less damage. So very, very nice set here. Now, this is why I said that when I talked about the skills, that Heroic Slash might be a flex slot, because that also does minor maim, reducing their damage done by 15%. But there's a lot of cool other skills that you can use as a Dragon Knight. I mainly like to keep this on unless I know what I'm doing. I mean, I usually know what I'm doing, but which content I'm doing, because certain content might require another skill, and then that's my flex slot. Other than that, I just keep it on because of the minor heroism. Okay, yeah, that's Torvacoons for you. And then the last set we're using is Defiled Dragon. This comes from the Lair of Marsilok. This gives us 2 stamina bonuses and 1 health bonus, and then when you take damage from a melee attack, you gain a corrupting aura around you that applies minor fracture and minor breach to all enemies, lowering their physical and spell resistance even more for another 1300. Now the aura lasts 5 seconds and this can occur every 5 seconds, so you can also have 100% uptime on this. Plus it's AoE, just like Torvacoon. It's not just on one, it's like an AoE aura around you, and Torvacoon is an AoE bile on the floor. Now the only other sources really where you can get minor fracture, minor breach would be a Templar's Power of the Light. So if you have a stamina Templar DPS in your group, he could give that as well, or a healer that's running Power of the Light, a Templar healer. However, I still think it's worth running these sets. Now you might say, I can get minor maim on one single target with heroic slash, and I can get minor fracture, minor breach on single targets with Power of the Light from a Templar in my group, but that would mean you'll always have to have a Templar healer in your group who is running Power of the Light, because not all of them are. I mean, in the meta community, it's pretty much known that Power of the Light is a good way to go, but I think even Alcast until a while ago, or even he might still have it, has the other morph on his Templar healer build. So it's not being said that you'll always have that, or you might be in a group with a Necromancer healer and a Warden healer, or with 2 Warden healers, or with a Templar who doesn't have it. Plus also, even if you are in a group with a Templar healer who has it, Power of the Light, yours is AoE and it can proc all the time. So the Templar healer can actually focus on healing and doing other buffs for the group, and doesn't have to focus on pretty much hitting 20 ads and each single one with Power of the Light all the time, like he probably would be, because there's a bunch of trials like that, like Sanctum Ophidia, where you get the trolls and the overchargers and whatnot, and then the healers don't have to run around but like, oh, Power of the Light on this one, and then on this one, and then on this one, and then on this one, but they can actually focus on healing, because you've got that covered. And that is only if there even is a Templar healer, as I said. So if you're with a Warden healer, or just with 3 DPS in a dungeon, that's really cool set actually. It helps a lot. And it's AoE and it can have 100% uptime, so you don't have to do anything, you just stand close to the targets and they'll all get afflicted with minor fracture and minor breach. Just the same with Torvacoon, you don't have to do anything, you're just in the middle of the enemy because you're the tank and you're stacking them up, and you'll afflict them all with minor maim and minor defile. So really cool sets. You got the Defiled Dragon, Torvacoons and Yolnacrins, all of them dragon based, play right into the Dragonknight class, and they work very, very well together. Plus, if you're running trials with another tank who's wearing the meta thingy of Ebon Alkosh, then you're gonna be really good with this, because you're gonna bring Yolnacrins, you're gonna bring Torvacoons and Defiled Dragons, and help everyone out with that. For the traits, this one, the one-hander, doesn't matter if it's a dagger, mace, or a sword. I would go with Decisive for extra ultimate gain, or with Defending for extra resistances. That's my 2 top choices. However, there's no glyph on this, or there is, but it's suppressed by the poison, because we're running a poison on this. Why are we running a poison on this weapon? Because every time we're using one of our weapon abilities, heroic slash or ransack, or just a light attack or a heavy attack with our front bar, we can proc that combustion passive, and that says when you apply a poison ability or a poison to an enemy, you restore 500 stamina. So the poisons on the weapon on a Dragonknight tank are really cool. It doesn't really matter which poisons you use. You can use the vulnerability ones to inflict them with minor vulnerability, so they take increased damage for 8 seconds, or you can just use even just the crown lethal ones if you wanted to, for doing random poison damage, or maybe the hindering ones for immobilizing them, or the draining ones for draining stamina and magicka from them. the poison choice is really yours. Like, you can play around with this and see what you like. And then on the shield, we got a health glyph and sturdy to furthermore help us with the reduction of block cost. Even though we already get a lot from defensive stance and our passives, yeah, sturdy is a good trait in this. The lightning stuff has to be infused with a crusher enchantment. That's very important because the infused makes the value of the glyph higher, so it goes up to 2026, and you furthermore reduce the target's physical and spell resistance. So you do reduce it with the minor fracture and breach from defiled dragons, you do it with the major fracture from your ransack taunt, and you do it with the lightning stuff. So you're really good on reducing the enemies or bosses' physical and spell resistances. And infused with crusher is pretty much how any tank these days runs their stuff on their back bar. May it be a lightning stuff or an ice stuff, doesn't matter. That's pretty much the most effective thing. And then we've got no reinforced on anything, and we can still, as you've seen before, hit the 33k almost and 30k spell resistance and physical resistance. So really cool. We have no need for any reinforced being a Nord Dragonknight Tank. So what we can do is put infused and tri-stack glyphs on all the big pieces to get 500 more of each resource. So the head, chest and legs are all in infused with tri-stack glyphs on them. And then all the small pieces are in sturdy with health glyphs on them. And then all of our jewelry pieces are all in healthy with the magicka recovery glyphs on them, so we don't fall below 1400 magicka recovery, because we really need that. The higher the better. Okay, so much for that. Now, if you're watching this video and you're a total beginner with the game and you just got to level 50 or so and you want to make a Dragon Knight, or even if you're below level 50 and you just checked it out for the skills that I'm using, here's sets that are easy to farm for tanks. You've got Ebon on the body pieces, except for your shoulders and head. And Ebon gives you more health, more healing taken, and increases the health of all of your group members. Now this set is really easy to farm. It's from Crypt of Hearts. It's a dungeon, which is fairly easy to beat on normal, and it drops quite a lot, and there's a lot of bosses in it, so it's really easy to get a full set of this. And it's also still very, very good in the very late end game content, so any tank should have that set anyway. So just farm Ebon if you can't get into Sunspire yet. And then for your monster set, you might want to use something like Swarm Mothers maybe, which will help you pull adds in, chain adds in, if you're not really too good with the Unrelenting Grip chain yet. Or another set that's very easy to get is Bloodspawn. I'm not sure if I have Peace Bloodspawn with me here right now. No. However, Bloodspawn just increases your ultimate generation even more, and that comes from Spindle Clutch 2, I think it is. And Spindle Clutch 2 on Veteran isn't too hard to get either. You shouldn't really go into Veteran dungeons unless you're 160 CP anyway, because there's no point in farming gear below 160 CP, because that's the gear cap. But yeah, if you can't get these yet, then go get Ebon on the body, Bloodspawn on the shoulders and head. And then for your main bar set, just use something like Plague Doctor, which you can easily buy in the guild traders, or just farm in Deshaan. It's an overland set that drops from Deshaan, and all it does, it gives you a shitload more health, which makes it a lot easier to get used to tanking. So you get 2 health bonuses of 1k, then 4% healing taken, and then another 3k health about just for nothing. And it's really easy to farm Blake Doctor jewelry and staff and a sword and a shield, or a dagger and shield, however you want it. So that will be the beginner setup for this. Okay, now I'm really gonna go to the champion points real quickly. Just do that. We want 72 into Ironclad for direct damage reduction, 51 into thick skin for damage over time reduction, and then 56 in elemental defender and hardy for frost, poison, disease, magic damage reduction, 19 into quick recovery for healing received, and then 16 into heavy armor focus. The reason I'm putting 16 in here is so to close the gap a little bit between the spell resistance and physical resistance, because we do have more spell resistance from our Dragonknight passives. I just wanted to close the gap a bit, so an extra 1500 physical resistance here is nice. Then we got 37 into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free, 16 into Bashing Focus to reduce the cost of bash by 10%, 3 into Sprinter because I didn't know where else to put them and being quick is nice, 74 into Arcanist for magic hit recovery, 64 into Tenacity, so our fully charged heavy attacks restore more magic hand stamina, 66 into Shadow Ward. You don't have to put more than 66 in here because we've got so much block cost reduction from our defensive stance, our passives, our sturdy pieces. You'll be just fine with this. And then 9 into Tumbling to reduce the cost of roll dodge a little bit. Also, if you get 75 here, you get Treasure Hunter, so you get better loot. 75 Blessed for increased healing done. 72 Elf Bone for increased critical healing because our green Dragon Blood heal can crit. 23 into Thaumaturge for damage over time. 1 into Piercing because I didn't know where else to put it. And 43 into Mighty for our poison damage and disease damage from our monster set. And then 56 into Precise Strikes for our critical healing with stamina abilities, because you might run Vigor at some point, which is a skill I'm going to get into in a second. Yeah, and then that'll boost that healing. The main reason why we have so much points in this is to get to the last stand passive, which you unlock when you have more than 120 points or 120 points in here. When you fall below 20% health, you gain Major Heroism, granting you 3 ultimate every 1.5 seconds. So this is a really nice passive for tanks. A lot of tanks spec into that because they don't know where else to put their points in the blue tree. So 120 in here to get this one is a good thing. And then Precise Strikes and Mighty is probably the most important for our build here. Now, optional skills. We're pretty much done with this build video now. All I'm doing now is quickly going into a couple other Dragonknight skills, because a lot of people choose a build, only level the skills that are on the bars here, and then if they get into trial situations and someone else says, well, do you have Mystic Orb, or do you have Shadow Silk, or do you have Blood Altar? They don't know what people are talking about. So here's a quick overview on what other skills are good on a Dragonknight. First of all, you've got Protective Plate from Draconic Power. This reduces your damage taken from projectiles by 50%. This can be really nice, and it also gives you immunity to snares. So this can be really nice for dungeons where you know you get a lot of projectiles incoming, or where you know that a lot of snares are going on, and you just want to put that on the bar somewhere and protect yourself from that. Then you get Deep Breath. What this does is it does like a breath thingy around you that deals magic damage and heals you, but also an enemy that is hit casting this is interrupted, set off balance, and stunned. So the interrupt is the more important part of this. Quickly show you what it looks like. It's just this big breath thing where you're sucking in air and then explode for fire damage. But most importantly, enemies hit with it are interrupted. And this can be really good, for example, Maw of Locage, when in the Twins fight one of the Templar enemies is sort of tying you down with their Jesus beam, and you can just use that to free yourself. Another skill that's nice to have is Stone Giant. That's not really as important as it used to be in the last patch because they changed it a lot, but if you get really good on tanking and you don't have any stamina problems at all, you can use this to apply stacks of stagger, as you see there above the enemies on that thing, and keep the 3 stacks up. Will cause the target to take more damage from all kinds of sources. So that's another debuff you can work with. However, I wouldn't advise anyone to use that unless you're really experienced, because it drains your stamina quite a lot, and keeping the stacks up is very hard also. Next up we got Shield Assault from the One-Handed and Shield skill line. That's also very cool. That's good for things like Halls of Fabrication, where the boss pushes you back and then you have to get close to him really fast because That's a mechanic. So this is what it does. You can rush towards an enemy and bash him with your shield. And it's just a really nice gap closer. And then also the ultimate of this one, Shield Discipline, is really nice. This one causes you to block for 8 seconds. It's really cheap too, 135 ultimate. Causes you to block for 8 seconds and it doesn't cost anything. You can do other things. You just automatically block. But you can do other skills in between or pop a potion or anything. And all of your one-handed shield abilities you're doing while this is active cost nothing. So you can taunt, do heroic slash, pop a potion, pop other skills, and you're always protected as if you were blocking. It's really nice too for some situations. From the destruction stuff, I would go with Crushing Shock just because it's a range interrupt, and Elemental Drain in case no one else has it and you for some reason need to put it on, even though that shouldn't happen. It's nice to have anyway. Immovable is very nice from the heavy armor skill line. This also gives you major resolve, which we also get from balance, so that wouldn't be the big thing, but it also grants you immunity to knockback and disabling effects for 7 seconds. And also each piece of heavy armor worm increases the amount of damage you can block and the potency of the snare. So we're wearing 7 pieces of heavy armor, and this is very good then for fights where you get loads and loads and loads of damage incoming that you need to block. I'm thinking stuff like Veteran, Sunspire. I've seen tanks use it a lot. So it's also a very nice skill to have. Then we've got Undaunted. Everything in this is good. Even for a tank, Bone Surge is a great shield. Inner Rage is a far taunt, we have that anyway. Spider Silk is good poison damage and gives a synergy. Overflowing Alta, when you put that on the ground, everybody in a huge area around the altar will get minor lifesteal, and if they attack people, they will heal from it while they're close to the altar. And then obviously Mystic Orb is another synergy you can give to your group if you have a free space on your bar, and it also deals a good amount of AoE damage. And then people who pop the synergy do even more damage. So that's also a very nice skill to have. All of the Undaunted ones are really good. Assault, Resolving Vigor is important. That's a heal, but it costs stamina. And there are sets like Battalion Defender where you boost your group if you're using assault abilities, and the only other assault ability you could use really is your Warhorn, but that's your ultimate. So having Vigor as a second stamina costing heal in the back of your inventory is really nice. Reviving Barrier is awesome too. This gives everybody a big shield or a ward, so to speak, that absorbs up to 18k damage for 30 seconds, and members in it heal over 15 seconds, so that keeps people alive very well. It's a pretty good skill. And then Purge, cleanse yourself and your group from negative effects. That's very nice for trials like Halls of Fabrications, where you have to deal with a lot of negative effects on your group. And that's about it. That's all these skills that are very good to have in the back of your hand, so to speak. So whenever you're following a build, don't just do the stuff that's on there. I mean, that works in probably 80% of the cases, but it's always nice to know your character, know your skills, and play around with other abilities too. Okay, so much for this build. I really hope you liked my sort of desecrating dragon-ish kind of build. It's tons of fun in the dungeons and trials, and it brings a bunch of really good debuffs to the table, and even an AoE version. So have a lot of fun with it. I hope you like it, and see you next time.